For Pembina Valley Mental Health Awareness Week, Kelly Vipond is with us. Kelly, thanks so much for coming.
Awesome. Great to be here.
And Kelly, you said that you find brain science fascinating, studying the different parts of the brain and what they do and how we can use that to kind of run a diagnostic test on ourselves.
And so I think a lot of people, it can be really empowering to understand how our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all related. And whether we are teenagers or whether we're adults, often what happens is there's this event, there's something that happens in our environment that triggers thoughts that we're often not even aware of, right? So let's say I see somebody at the grocery store and I know them and I think they saw me, but they walk away from me, right? I'm going to tell myself stories potentially about that. And those stories, those thoughts are going to lead to me being activated emotionally potentially, right? And so then those feelings often will fuel how we behave. And so those things are all really important to understand, that every single behavior has roots that are invisible to everybody else. And so, in working with teenagers, often we're seeing behaviors that don't necessarily make sense. But when you're able to sit down and help them even to backtrack, you did this thing. And what I know about people is that usually behaviors come from a feeling and a thought and something that triggered those feelings and thoughts. Do you know what those are? And most often the answer is no. Maybe we can tell what the trigger is, but even to just go through that and really identify, when this person said this, or they looked at me this way, or, they did this, it made me feel this way. And often the thought is the last thing to come. And to be able to identify those sort of drivers in our behavior is really, really important, especially when it comes to mental health. Mental health, everybody is going to have positive feelings and negative feelings, right? But what happens is when our mental health starts to slide, often it's because we are experiencing way more negative feelings, which are all driven, for the most part, by negative thoughts, right? We tell ourselves negative things about the intentions of other people. We tell ourselves negative things about ourselves. We tell ourselves negative things about the world, about the future. These are all drivers to negative feelings, which can make us behave in ways that are challenging. They don't make it any better, right? They kind of create this never-ending loop of negativity, and that can be is a huge driver in a lot of mental health issues.
And so when somebody feels these negative thoughts and them looping around back and forth like that, are there things they can do to kind of separate themselves from that and kind of figure out where that comes from?
Well, definitely. I think a couple of really key things is to really sit with that emotion. So many of us, negative feelings are uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to feel those. So then we try to move away from them, or we minimize them, we defend against them, we pretend they're not there. And so many of us, this has been, the mechanism of our survival is that we ignore those negative feelings. But if we're able to sit with them and understand, there's patterns that are leading to this. What are the patterns of my feelings? What are the patterns of my thoughts? How do those thoughts affect the strength of those feelings? And what sort of triggers exist for me? You have a whole boatload of tools to now be able to manage your emotional state, your mental state, and your behavior in new and different ways. And that's really empowering. Another thing, because a lot of people find it really challenging to identify what the thoughts are. They happen so fast. Like if you've ever tried to write when there's so many things in your mind, your hand can't keep up, right? Your brain goes so fast. And so a mindfulness practice can be really, really helpful, because all mindfulness really is sitting there, choosing a focal point, whether it's your breath or whether it's like whatever happens to work for you. Maybe it's, a feeling in your body. and you choose to focus on that and then watch your mind run and swing like a monkey from tree to tree, because it does. It's what brains do. So even to be able to notice patterns, oh, wow, my mind goes like 1,000 miles a minute, and it goes in patterns like this. That is tremendously empowering to know those sorts of things. And so even just being able to sit with it and mindfully be aware of what's happening is hugely empowering. And from there, you have an opportunity to change those patterns. And that's what counselors do, right? Counselors are here to help people figure out, how can I change my thoughts? How can I change all of these different pieces? And how can I work with what's happening and help you to be able to kind of restructure or reframe things so that you feel better.
And the high school counselor is certainly something in a teenager's toolkit that they can use to navigate those feelings. And your time working as a school counselor, you said that one thing you've noticed is how social media can kind of affect a teenager's sleep schedule, and this can have an effect on their mental health.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if we think about social media as one of those environmental triggers that we talked about earlier, they influence our thoughts, right? And because I'm going to generalize and say that online people are meaner, that, you have all these experiences where people kind of are mean to you. And that tends to stick out in your mind because it's painful. We remember things more when they're painful. We have this negativity bias, right? Because it's meant to keep us safe. And so when we're interacting online, or teenagers specifically are interacting online, they remember these things, and it influences their thinking, which influences their feelings, which influences their behavior, right? And so we often see kids interacting online from a place of a stress response or a threat response. They're constantly feeling like they need to defend themselves. And to back out of that doesn't feel right for lots of young people. They want to stick up for themselves. And so I find that a lot of people a lot of teenagers specifically, but it's adults too, we really get almost addicted to social media, to technology, to this constant bombardment in our brain. It really lights up that reward system in our brain, specifically for teenagers, because we're looking at socializing, right? We're learning how to socialize in the real world as an adult. And so what can happen there is we become addicted, and it starts to get in the way of sleep patterns, right? So we're on our phone until 4 a.m, and then we got to wake up at 7, and oh no, where did it go? My whole night was just dedicated to TikTok. And so what we can do is really start to be intentional. I'm not saying that we need to completely give up phones or technology, because that's really not possible, I feel, in this modern world. But we can prioritize sleep schedules and self-care activities like exercise, making sure we eat regularly, and then making sure that our technology use is a little more monitored so that we're doing this in a healthy way. We're engaging with technology and social media in a healthy way that is monitored, and we're really paying attention to, hey, when I'm on my phone till midnight, I don't sleep as well, and then I'm tired in the morning, and when I use too much social media, I feel bad about myself. That's a huge thing that I see. So what we can do is, if we need to wake up at 6 and we need 8 hours of sleep, that means we're in bed by 10. Then maybe that means we're putting our phone away by 9 or 9:30. And you don't even have to do it forever. I tell my students this. You don't have to say you're doing this forever. Try it for a week and see how you feel. Give yourself that digital sunset and just see. It's like a little science experiment. See how it goes. And so, prioritizing those things can be really, really helpful. And then doing little experiments with yourself to see, how can my behaviors influence how I feel?
Well, there we go. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for coming in this morning and being a part of Pembina Valley Mental Health Week.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.